and the real-world applications of your knowledge. And what does this mean again? There is the theoretical content in class. If you're in the software journalism, you've been told what are the components of a press release. However, you will now be able to every day, probably someone will be asking you to draft them. Level that you feel that you have something to gain from everyone. So this cannot be the I only hang out with A students. So realize that everyone in your class in the next 10 years, it's going to look very different. Maybe the top student might have some slower career growth for one reason or another, or they might even go just into very, very niche and deep research and scientific roles that maybe within the industry, but there might be the average student in your class who somehow is very well spoken, who goes into a firm and grows much faster because they can brand themselves better, they can communicate results and better, they can coach a team better. And what this means is that be open and focus on problem solving. I don't mean network, just make sure you're friends or you're going out to party with everyone in your class. I mean focus on problem solving. If you're having a group discussion, just make sure that you're appreciating what everyone brings into the group. If someone's at the early stage, sometimes you keep that WhatsApp group and maybe someone is having a question about their job. They're like, I don't know, I'm working on this problem. Could you help me? Volunteer yourself, because these networks go a long way. So I want you to know that some of the people you're sitting with in your class right now, some of them will be on Forbes in the next few years. Some of them will be on CNN, giving like leadership advice. And so appreciate that and know that you can, and some of them will be you as well, yeah? So make sure that you're in a constant state of networking and also offering value to others. And then the last one, focus strongly on building your quality of skills. And something that I would like all of you to take away from this is the power of feedback. So I know, of course, coming from the typical 844 learning path, we know that, good is always, you want everyone to be praising your results. But sometimes I found also some of the most critical pieces of feedback give you the best material for you to build up on. And so that means sometimes if someone after a meeting tells you, Mary, I feel like you didn't bring out this point well, I felt that this report was missing something, don't jump into defense mode. Try to take this as, people who want you to grow. And it's not everyone, but the thing is, what I would encourage, and I've learned up to now, don't take feedback personally. So if someone tells you this report, look at it objectively. If you can gain from it, if you feel that the critique was not really founded, then don't take it personally. But feedback is very important. And you will find that sometimes even when you get a job rejection, especially when you reach the final round, reach out to the recruiter, tell them, I take my personal development quite seriously. I appreciated the opportunity also to go for this first round of interviews and learn a lot about your firm. Could you provide me with some feedback that could help me do better in the future? Sometimes, especially when I've gotten to the last round of interviews, I really ask them, could you give me some tips or some of the gaps you found that were missing in my application or in my profile, then that the other person had better than me. And you will find sometimes these recruiters will respond. Of course, you will appear to be a lot more coachable. And if for any reason anything happens with their first candidate, you've already set such a good impression. So I would say have this kind of collaborative mindset. Again, I want to underline all this with sometimes it will purely be luck. And what I mean is that if you do all these things in a tough job market, in tough job market conditions, it does not mean that you have failed or you're doing something wrong. Sometimes when it comes to the renewable energy industry, which is where I built a lot of my trajectory towards a global career, I find that I was just in the right place at the right time. And what this means is that I got an internship at an industry that was experiencing tremendous growth. And so I was able to be exposed to very many roles and very many opportunities, which maybe could not have been the case if I went to, I don't know, manufacturing or construction. So sometimes I want you also to not be hard on yourself, but remember, especially when you're job searching, you only need one yes. And I will give an example. I will pause here and give an example of I left a really good job to go and do my master's in the UK when I got the Achieving Award. And against maybe better advice, because my dad had actually mentioned that I should ask for a study leave. But at this time, I felt I also wanted more. I will have new knowledge. I quit my job to go and take up the award. And when I came back, it was just after the 2017 elections. And again, with the renewable energy industry, because a lot of the investment is foreign, there was just no progress in the industry. And I did stay unemployed for 6 months, which meant moving back into my parents' house and really, professionally applying for jobs every day. What I decided to do, though, was attend industry events with the savings that I had. And I kid you not, I met my boss at Bosch. I worked first in Bosch, Kenya. In total, I worked for Bosch for 7 years. So I started in Kenya, and then I took over an Africa role, and then I moved to Germany. And I really had already applied for the opportunity in the on the normal expression of interest link on LinkedIn and sent my application. And then I saw that they were having an event at Strathmore University. And I tell this story just to help you understand that sometimes saying that I've sent the application is not enough. And so when I met my colleagues, my future colleagues there, I sat next to one of the gentlemen who ended up being in my team. Of course, I'd researched about what the company does and this event and everything. So after the presentation, I asked this gentleman I was sitting next to, you guys are hiring for a project coordinator. Have you filled the role yet? And I remember he pointed to the stage and he said, that's the boss, talk to him. And so the presentation is over, you're this student. And I remember because my boss later tells the story like tens of times. Apparently, I walked up to him and I told him, hello, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Of course, because of the presentation and I was in the renewable energy industry, I ended up having a lot of very, very precise details about the project, which had not been publicized before. So I told him, I know you're working on this pay-as-you-go solution with 1234 company. I know you're trying to bring in micropayments into this sector. Of course, this is something I also understood from the session. And I told him, I'm the best person for the job. I can really do it well. And I remember he just stared at me and told me, send me your CV in an hour. Once I joined the organization, what I learned is that they had already shortlisted, they had looked at the thousands of applications that naturally come when you put out any job posting in Kenya. And so it's not a perfect process. Sometimes the recruiter will just not see your application. These days, there are AI systems. I think you know about ATS. If you don't, just write it down and look it up. It will be an inbuilt system where it automatically just detects the words that are placed in the application. And so you might have the perfect profile, but because you didn't use the keywords, those tags, it just doesn't pick up your CV. And sometimes you will find that it will not even be shown in the recruiter window. A lot of these Workable, all these job application sites that power a lot of big companies, they use this ATS. And so to be honest, I can really, really vouch for networking and brand. Put yourself out there, talk to people. You will be very surprised. And even if you get a no, you only need one yes. So just always remember that in the hundreds and piles of rejection emails, you just need one yes. That's it. Yeah. So that's a really important one to take away. So let's go to the next phase. So you've already had your entry level role and you've gotten in. One thing I wanted to talk about was just upskilling and the process of changing roles. So this is something that also can happen in the greater context once you're growing within the career path. And I don't feel that it's too early to tell you these things, because sometimes it's also nice to identify them quite early. The power of networking. I told you I'm part of an association which I also joined as a student, Women in Sustainable Energy and Entrepreneurship. And some of the softer benefits that I also got, besides putting me in the same room with professionals, this was one of the places I also could find my very early on referees. Because if I needed a reference in the energy industry, and by the way, there was a network of very accomplished women, I would instantly, I've worked with them. I'm volunteering to do a report here and to do, to compile the meeting minutes. And so the moment I have an energy industry job, I instantly can call upon you and ask you, can I put you down as my referee? Because I don't have any, I don't have any solid references in the job industry at this time. So think about that also as something you can leverage. There are many associations. There are associations for manufacturers, for software engineers. There are really many associations across the board. Some of them you can also join international ones and just attend online. The power of mentorship, I think I've touched a bit on it. And mentorship does not really mean, it's a bit awkward because you do not walk up to someone and ask them, can you be my mentor? But what you do sometimes, you can follow them on LinkedIn and see their content. You can also attend events and, keep up with discussions. Sometimes also there are soft mentors. For example, in an organization, you can identify, I like the way this person speaks or how they make reports. Can I just ask them to have a look at my report before I submit it? That's also a very soft form of mentorship. So it's something important. Something I can recommend also is raising your hand and volunteering to do the tasks that nobody else wants. And as you get into the world of work, you realize that there are repetitive tasks that some people avoid, maybe because they are hard or mundane, but that's when you prove yourself and that's when you build character. So I would recommend, especially as you start early on, that that's where you shine, And of course, something that I've also benefited from is staying open and learning new skills. I have just moved from Germany, where I had to really, really greatly improve and learn the German language. It has benefited me a bit in my new organization. But like I mentioned, now being in Cairo for 4 months, I'm in the process of learning Arabic. I can count to 10 and read number plates of Ubers. But don't run away from learning because you feel I finished my education. I'm sure in the world that's coming up of AI agents, probably we have to learn as well when we're at work. So I want you to know that your degree gives you the power to read and the power to explore new knowledge, but it's not an end. It's not in any way an end. And some of the most effective leaders I've encountered, also my own mentors, are people who are in this continuous journey of leading. So again, you might do all this and still remember that it's a matter of your circumstances working together. But remember to go above and beyond. Remember to take calculated risks, of course, including sometimes when transitioning into a role, it won't be perfect. There might be that pause, but remember that all this is taking you towards your journey. So of course, eventually you will get on the growth and promotion and transition part of your journey. And in this phase, I would like you all to focus on learning how things are done at an organizational level and real world application. So at this point, you can open up your mind. And I want to confidently tell you, as someone who got all their education up to the bachelor's level in Kenya, that we, like in products of Kenyan education system, are really impressive at a global stage. And so do not let anything in your mind hinder you from looking at, the top S&P 500 companies, looking at OpenAI and such cutting edge innovative companies like Apple, and thinking that you cannot be able to get there. Those seats are made for everyone. And trust me, as somebody who's also been on the other side, we are pretty impressive. All you need to do, of course, is to, prepare, leverage your strengths, but also be confident in yourself. Um, of course, some of this promotion, I will not dwell too much here, but I thought it's important for you to have a look that sometimes by the time you get to the growth and promotion phase, middle manager, you will find that some of your networks are also now taking on leadership roles in other industries. So you can transition to other companies because you can leverage these existing networks. You can grow internally in the company through, and this is through internal promotions. Maybe your knowledge is so good and they want you to take up more responsibility. You can network also with your peers and focus on other initiatives and problem solving within your community. Entrepreneurship is also a very valuable path, and you can leverage even your connections and your knowledge built from the industry. And in this case, you can also continue to expand your skills to support your transition. And so I want to just mention, for example, just my recent transition to Afreximbank. I was working at this time in the most innovative companies in the world. And like I mentioned, it's really cutting edge technologies. But at the end of the day, I also want you to remember that as much as you're building a career, you're also building a life. So there are different circumstances that play within your decisions. So raising a young family, which comes with its own set of challenges. So when a new opportunity comes, I want you to also be able to be in a position to evaluate it at a 360. Maybe being in Africa, for example, the continent, it's closer even in terms of time. And so I want you to remember, as we look back on the journey, that some of these stops, it will not be apparent for how long you stopped there, for what reason you stopped there. But at least I hope with that run through, I've given you some insight and some sneak peek into some of the tools that can be able to get you through. So what can we take away from this session? I will come back to my hiking analogy just because it's something I really like. Sometimes you will be like in the first graphic on the top of the mountain, right? And like I mentioned, this will give you a view of the that you need to conquer. Like in this position on the falling off a cliff, right? And for any reason, also through your can be laid off job market. You can also be like the lady at the third icon who is transitioning, so jumping from one peak to another. And sometimes you might slip and fall. Like I mentioned, one of my transitions was not very smooth for half a year. I was out of the market. But when you look at my CV, you don't see that. And so I want you to know that as you go through, maybe you're fresh out of school and it's been a year of sending CVs, I would ask myself, am I attending industry events and networking? 2, am I speaking to my professor and following up and checking if there are any opportunities? 3, am I talking with my classmates and checking if there are any opportunities as well? 4, am I looking for relevant organizations and volunteering my time in a way that I'm learning? And if you're doing all this, it's just a matter of time. It's really one of those, it's like lotto. The more times you try, the higher your chances are of winning, right? So sometimes it's really just about the number of times you try. So the key takeaways from this session, as we reach almost the end, everything that has led up to this moment in terms of how success is achieved or measured will not matter going forward. So it's nice that you had an A, that you were the top of your class, that you were the top KCP or KCSE candidate and you were in the newspaper, but it will not matter. The world of work is really measured in a different currency. It's in terms of your skill, your ability to network, your soft skills, and I would really encourage all of you to start intentionally building them. Join even Toastmasters, join debate club, learn how to communicate. And of course, in also in an age where, the clips are shorter, the attention span is shorter, please try to, whether you find podcast or make sure that you really prepare that other part of yourself. Because right now, if I sent out an application, a job poster that said I need someone in Kenya with 5 years experience and a master's, I will probably get like more than 500 people who fit the template. So what sometimes I'm looking for, even when as I go through applications, is what makes them stand out. What else? What else? Yeah. So are they running like a local charity that's teaching, I don't know, literacy, that's encouraging literacy? Did they run a big fundraising and raise X amount? And in the cases so think about what else besides your CV. A key takeaway also, ultimately, it will be up to you to choose where you will go and build your career, but the steps leading up to it will not be so obvious. And again, for me, like I mentioned, the dots only connect in hindsight, but I could not have stood on graduation day in JKUAT and thought of any of this. Actually, I want to mention that some of the jobs that you are going to work do not exist yet. When I graduated, there was nothing in the market like an Uber driver. It was not a job, it was not a viable entrepreneurial venture. And I remember during my first job when they just introduced Uber to Kenya, the older the conventional taxi drivers were very upset that sometimes when you were leaving meetings, you had to pretend to call the Uber driver and pretend he's your friend. So you had to be like, oh, Eric, I'm coming. And you really had to like greet them like they're your friend, because even a few of them had been torched and set on fire. So I just want to mention that the AI revolution is coming. Africa doesn't have as many data centers as we should. So there will be jobs that you will do that do not exist right now. So what I need you to do is just to follow the steps successively and to trust that they will lead up to something down the road. When you stop learning, you stop growing. So please keep learning, whether it's a new language, whether it's a new culture, whether it's new technologies. You have been given the power to read. I think on your graduation, they actually say that in the speech when they're bestowing you the degree. You're not given like the degree like it's the full stop. You're given the power to read, right? Something else I would like us to take away, your set of circumstances are unique, so should your decision. So at the end of the day, remember, you're not only building a career, you're building a life. So you might take breaks in your career for one reason or another. You might stop to care for the health of a loved one. And all these are things that people don't take into account. You might move back home to deal with a financial difficulty and do not feel that you have been kicked off the journey of success. This is something you can pause and go on with. Almost finally, you can only connect the dots backwards, not forwards. So take the next best step that's in front of you, but do not feel that I don't see. Honestly, I did at that time, I could not have been able to see how working on a construction project on the Southern Bypass with our Chinese contractor could have somehow prepared me for a career in banking, in Africa's largest direct financial multilateral institution. But the dots somehow connect backwards, not forwards. And then finally, when you do get what you want, do not forget to pay it forward. And it can be through volunteering. It can be also through sharing with the next generation, just something you've learned. But it's always important to remember that, to be grateful and to also pay it forward. So what I hope I've given you today, besides just some examples of what it means to move from point A to maybe K, because I don't think I've reached my Z yet, I hope to give you the ability to dream. I hope to give you the ability to imagine and to want not just really career success in Kenya, not just in our continent, but on a global scale. I hope you leave this session having some practical tools that will help you navigate whatever alternative futures await you, because you truly are the future leaders, you're the future manufacturers, you're the future, traders, the future Dangotes of our continent and our world, yeah? And of course, the world needs a lot more of these empathetic and focused leaders. So thank you very much. I will bring us to our Q&A. Dr. Ming, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mary, for those insights anecdotes, points of reflection, words of wisdom, wise counsel. I mean, there's just so much that we can say, and reflecting on every single slide that you made there, it's really, really packed with a lot. Can we please show some appreciation for Mary with some emojis kindly? That was wonderful. That was really, really good, Mary. And we really appreciate the time, the thoughts. I'm thinking so much reflection went into the preparation of that deck and even the execution of it. It's been wonderful. So we really appreciate that. I had requested that the participants share some questions with us. And I've gotten a couple of questions in the box, and I can read, and you can speak to them. If you need some interjection, you can raise your hand, and we will give you the mic. But for now, let me read the questions for you, Mary, and then we can look at the people who've raised their hands, and you can give them the mic. There's a question from Damaris in Juguna. It's quite an interesting question. How can an intern maneuver around office politics? That's a question from Damaris. How can an intern maneuver around office politics?
Oh, okay. So I will try to not be very prescriptive. And what I mean is that there is no one answer, like one scenario that we could apply across the board. However, what I have found, politics is such an integral part of every workplace. And as someone who is not a big fan of politics, I just want to do my job and be good at my job. I have found that there is no way to stay free of it. However, sometimes there's a level, it's really important to be connected with your why. And what I mean is that if I'm walking right now from Cairo on foot, from Cairo to Nairobi, and someone is walking still from Cairo, my starting point, to, let's say, the gate of where I'm living, right?
Yes.
These two people are going to have a very different mindset, right? I'm going to be more concerned about the temperature. Have I carried enough snacks? Are my shoes okay? Am I walking at the right pace? Because my journey is much longer. However, someone who's taking a stroll to the gate might actually stop to see, there's a couple arguing at the parking. You know, there's some litter that has been spilled over. Probably the cleaner didn't sweep the compound properly. Do you get what I mean? At least with my analogy, I mean that sometimes there's a certain level of focus, and especially starting early on, and you're just boring and aloof, like you're not giving me any tea or any gist. I will not come to you the next time yourself to be the person who was not invited to this thing over the weekend, and accept that, right? It's not a form of bullying, but accept that. Because of course, once you become aloof and you're not too into other people's businesses, then you're also not the go-to person. So yes, you will find that there was a party over the weekend and you weren't invited, but allow yourself permission for that.
Okay. Thank you. And I can see that Damaris has responded in the box, and she says, true to that. Damaris, you'll tell us your story one of these fine days. But I have a couple of questions that are in the box because they posted them earlier. Let's dispense with them, and then we come to some of our colleagues who raised their hands. Matthew Kamau, thank you for the question. What if someone has skills in two fields? Can that person major in one that he has deeper understanding, and the other one, he does it as a part-time job?
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in that. I did sustainable energy and entrepreneurship. And sometimes I've had advantages because as an engineer, you have the technical depth.
Yes.
but sometimes it's the entrepreneurial business part, the commercial thinking part that has given me advantages. It's like, it's nice you're an engineer, but can you talk business? So absolutely, I'm a big believer in both.
Yeah.
Diversifying is amazing. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Mary. You can see a comment that came from Telvin. Telvin is my family. Engineer Telvin Mutua. Thanks for coming on board. His was a comment. He's saying that the feedback aspect from the recruiters is something that I have never thought of. So many thanks to you, Mary, for those insights. There's a question that came from Madame Anne Mwangi, who is a member of faculty in the Department of Media. And Anne is asking, good evening, Madam Mary. Have you ever engaged in the business sector? If yes, how did you balance between work and business or entrepreneurship?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yes, I've been an entrepreneur. At the beginning, actually, when I was very early in the energy industry, a few friends of mine set up a venture. I came in as a co-founder, so which means I bought in. So during the 6-month period, actually, when I was job hunting after the UK, what happened was that, not to stay idle, we worked on this venture. I knew, like, eventually, you're looking for employment opportunities full time. Because again, the reality to want to support yourself, to support the things you want. But I would say, in terms of giving me experience, giving me opportunities to still have like real hands-on work, going to meet clients, going to sell, to pitch, going to also events, startup events, and applying for these grants and funding. Some of this knowledge I've carried on to my roles in the future. So yes, I have. I did not really have a point where I was deep in business and deep in employment at the same time. But entrepreneurship is something that has helped me, and I've learned a great deal. Yeah.
And how have you balanced between what you do and your family time, like moving different countries? I'm Mwangi, different countries.
Wow. That's a very, very loaded question, but I would say the long and short of it is that there are so many invisible systems around everyone, which is why I don't think success is a one person's job. There are so many invisible forces around everyone that enable you to stand. So from the mentors who volunteer to, put their names on your CV, to, for example, with relocation, one of the biggest strengths has just been my parents, honestly, which means sometimes leaving my children with them for some time to come and settle into Cairo and just knowing they're okay. Sometimes coming with them, honestly, my mom now is a professional expert grammar because with every new assignment, I'm like, we're going here. So there's really a big invisible network. But this also comes from the humility of knowing you have to ask for help, right? That you can't do it alone. There's no strength in doing it alone. So I'm really a pro at raising my hand and saying, on this day, I need this help. Yeah. And so it's something to be comfortable with.
Thank you very much.
And I think Madam Anne Mwangi would be happy to join the wise team. Maybe we can connect Mary and interested ladies for your program.
Absolutely. Yes. I would really be happy to do that. Dr. Mwindi, you'll help me follow that on after the call.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Anne, as well. We have a comment from Brian Cheruyot, and I think that is my good friend who is our class rep. And he's commenting that he's saying, whoa, I've learned a lot. Even though in second year, I feel you've made a very great impact on my career path. Good feedback there.
If nothing else happens, this is way, way more than what I wanted to accomplish. Thank you very much, Brian.
Okay, so we have a couple of hands that are raised and we can give them the mic. Keep me
Sure.
teach Kirui. The mic is yours. If you're there, you had raised your hand. Okay, he's saying that he's following, so let me lower his hand. Collins Mahigi, you raised your hand. The mic is yours.
Yes, I'm here. I hope I'm visible. So, first of all, I wanted to respond on the issue of office politics. I could say that someone maybe can choose what to follow up and what not to follow, because I know through office politics someone can land a job in that company or not, and so on. So, and then on the other, now I have a question. So we understand that something like software engineering is a skill-based profession, right? So some of us come to the degree when we already have the skills, so we already know how to code. So is there a way maybe someone can land a job before he gets the degree, and then maybe supplement it or balance with the learning process? So I wanted to ask that to our host, our speaker today.
All right. Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas.
All right, so I will just go ahead and respond. So first of all, it's very impressive, especially having worked in the industry and then going to get the credential. I appreciate that because I also had a few colleagues in my bachelor's class, especially in JQuat, who, yes, you have worked for years, maybe you want to register your surveying firm, and the institution of surveyors in Kenya require you to have this minimum. Sorry, I will just
Maybe
mute you.
Collins, you can just mute to reduce the echo, to eliminate the echo.
Yes. So to be honest, I think it's something brilliant. Within the job setup, I know a few technology companies have started very much to drop the degree requirement. However, like you know, this is usually something that's, I'm sure at some point, maybe 80 years ago or something, they decided that let's put this as a minimum criteria. But as we continue, especially in the area of software with so much technological changes, sometimes you find that either they're removing the requirements, or countries like UAE, I think I also saw the US putting down such mandates where they're going to require like AI embedded in their curriculum from a very early stage. So again, this is not something we can solve over this call, because institutionally, your education ministry has to also recognize that this is a very big requirement and prepare the workforce for these, jobs of the future. However, what I would say from my experience, and I think you saw it in one of my slides, so a degree does not matter, and that's the truth, until you don't have it. You get what I mean?
Yes.
Yes, like once you get the degree, no one cares. 100 other people have the degree. But when you don't have it, it can really block a lot of opportunities for you. So sometimes you find that there are people who enter the organization because you're a specialist and you work very well and you have no bachelor's. Until it comes to time to be vetted for a promotion. And suddenly, so if I was seated today in uni, or if it was my, I don't know, child or young brother was advising, but after you get paper, just know nothing. Yes, I hope that was clear.
Yes, at some point we lost you very briefly, but yeah, the message is on.
All right.
Message is
But I finished Maybe one thing I want to say, I've noticed a comment in the chat from Abdul Malik
Yes,
saying
please. Go ahead.
danke, that's thank you in German. Say again, I want to respond to him. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Abdul Malik, vielen Dank.
Yeah. Okay. Just words of appreciation from Odhiambo Donald. And thanks, Odhiambo. You are the first student who joined the video. We appreciate staying with us. Mary, thanks for the impactful knowledge on careers. Thanks for allowing us this platform. Evely Atenga, this has been an informative session. Excuse me. Thank you for sharing all the gems, Madam Mary. Hope to connect with you in the near future. Powerful, informative, and inspiring session. Congolais, an astute iron lady with substance. Those are very, very good words. And we have Telvin's hand is up as we wrap up the session. Telvin, briefly.
Okay, good evening, and thank you so much for this opportunity, Dr. Mwindi and Mary. I have only 2 comments. One, I would like Mary to shed more light on attaining professional certifications. Like, for instance, for us in the energy sector, we do shed more light on the essence of professional certifications to the young guys who are in school. For me, I am an early career professional. So most of us didn't understand the essence of that when we were in school. So please speak to it, to what it means for them to engage in such forums, and the essence and how much the significance goes into. And then for me, one thing stood out when you talked about entrepreneurship and being in mainstream corporate. Please explain how one can find balance by coming into it, by practicing entrepreneurship while still engaging in main corporate activities, whereby you can be able to nurture your creativity while still maintaining a decent corporate engagement in between. And where's the thin line in between? How can one toe the line? Yeah, so those are my only 2 key concerns.
Okay, so I will take it in two bits. Yeah, so we will start with the importance of these certifications, as a minimum requirement for entry into an industry. And I think, so something I didn't know, despite joining the solar energy industry around 8-10 years ago, is that the solar energy industry in Kenya was very old. It had started in the 80s. And what happened was that because it was not formalized, and what this meant is that any electrician in any neighborhood could go and buy a solar panel, could buy batteries, an inverter, and come and connect them to your home. A lot of solar systems across the country failed. And so when the Ministry of Energy and the regulator looked at this, and it was time for, there was a big technology boom, the price of panels globally had gone very low, and the industry was ready to grow. There was a lot of skepticism in the country, in Kenya. And that's actually what led to formalizing the standards. So an example with solar, I guess you're referring to, for example, if I want to be a technician, I have to do an exam that's written and get my T1 or T2 or T3 certification to show that I can connect either an industrial scale array that can power maybe a factory on Mombasa Road, or I can just do the small Pico Solar, the small lamp like what M-Kopa Solar has. So one thing that certification does is that it enables you to price your offering. And especially as you start off, when you're not the who's who of the industry. So think about it, for example, I know you have a bachelor's course in your university in psychology, right? So think about it. You've just started off as a psychologist. So maybe you're not known, nobody will refer me to you. Maybe you're working for a smaller organization. If I'm looking for a, entry-level psychological support, it would help if you have maybe some global family certification or training you've done somewhere, because it can help you to also back up and justify your pricing, for example, which is something you have to think about. If you're a member of an organization, let's say the Association of Psychologists. Again, I'm making this up because I know nothing about the industry, but I'm sure they have an association globally, or maybe in Africa or in the country. If you're a member of this, it means you're more likely also to leverage your networks. Maybe they might find this client does not meet my price point or offering, but I can be able to refer you to a professional. Or maybe they can meet someone and they're like, I'm not based in Kisumu, but I know a colleague who's part of the association who has a practice in Kisumu, who can come and see you. So it's within this kind of bodies and networks that you're able not only to leverage the name, to also understand governance and the structures and the rules that surround this. But also, when you think about it in terms of growth, it's what differentiates you from a freelancer, despite having the degree itself. And I don't say freelancer to mean like to connote anything bad, but it essentially means that I can be able to hold you to this standard. It means that you are following these specific guidelines that have been agreed upon to govern this profession, and which is why I take it very seriously. And so sometimes it's not just about the tag and putting it on your LinkedIn that you've gotten it. It's associating with the upholding those standards with the group that you associate with. The second question about entrepreneurship, and this is something maybe I will borrow from my experience, although I do know there are very many successful entrepreneurs in their own right who would also give a better perspective on how to go up the journey. What I would like to touch on is how my own experience in an entrepreneurial venture helped me to go on and be a corporate entrepreneur. So it's a field that's still developing. I would like you to all look at it and look into it, because at the moment, there are very many large corporates which are quite successful in terms of their bread and butter and what they offer, who are still wanting to be competitive in the future. And so what's happening is that they're taking successful entrepreneurs, putting them in their organization to work still like a startup, except you will never worry about running out of funding. And for several years, this is what I did at Bosch. I was an intrapreneur. It's really a thing. You should look it up, yeah? So I want you to know that because as somebody who has both gone to university about it, evaluates, supports. At the moment, I work in a bank, so I am funding entrepreneurial ventures. I actually have an accelerator program which was launched, and by the end of the year, I'll be investing together with my team around $250,000 in equity in up to 10 startups. So a lot of entrepreneurial ventures fail, and I just want you to know that's a fact. The proof is there, research indicates it. And what I want you to know, your success as an entrepreneur is not just measured in terms of your company staying alive. You will see, for example, on LinkedIn, somebody saying 2-time founder or 3-time founder. And these are very attractive entrepreneurs. What this means is that you have tried and failed once, you have tried and failed twice, you're now in your third trial, but somehow the learnings from your previous failures are very valuable moving forward. So I want us all to understand that your likelihood of your venture failing it's extremely high. A lot of ventures, actually, especially in Africa, where funding is also dry, within your third year, it doesn't exist. However, the knowledge is very important. And if you could also find a way to package your little business that you were with in university, I don't know, making websites for students. As you write your CV, I don't only want to hear about your degree in IT. Tell me about how you ran this small venture. Tell me how you managed your clients. Tell me how you delivered. Tell me how much you earned. Tell me how you had an initiative that you also made a website for a small NGO at no cost. Paste a link of that website there. Those are some of the things that get me feeling, this guy, I mean, it doesn't matter, he has not worked, he has been working, he has just not worked formally, or she. So entrepreneurship is a big launch pad, but sometimes I see people shying away even in interviews from saying that yeah, for the past 1 year, as I waited to get into the job market, yeah, I was selling eggs. And somehow these eggs, I've made 6 figures. I've managed to invest in an incubator. That's not embarrassing at all. You will be surprised how attractive that is for me, like if I read it in a CV. Because if you could show that you were able to manage your employees, manage inventory, have a sort of like sales process in place, I don't
Yes.
need to teach you anything. You will teach me things. Yeah. So package this entrepreneurial experience, and it's quite attractive for the workplace. Of course, I still wish you success as an entrepreneur, but I'm also giving you ways to think about how to diversify.
I mean, excellent, excellent. Thank you, Mary, and thank you for the questions. Allow me to read very briefly some comments from our students. Be powerful, informative, and inspiring session. Congolese, an astute lady. I think I read that, sorry. Samuel Odur, one of our student leaders in iTech. Blessed with such a knowledge, with such knowledge dissemination. I think that was not complete. David Soita is a student leader in IT. It has been an educative session packed with learning skills. Thank you so much. We have one of our student entrepreneur who is running a company that is called Astra Softwares, and they're doing so well. Mary, you should check them out. They've told you thank you for the powerful insight. I can see there's a question from our Google Developers Club. Kindly shed some light on the importance of soft skills over technical skills in the industry. That's a question you will take at some point, Mary. Let me just read what we have here. I have a production company that is called Roll Per Media that is registered. I opted to open the company due to the level of creativity I have in videography, editing, graphic design, and directing. The company is doing good right now, and I recently introduced an online radio station called Artbeat Radio in it, and I'm currently attached to the company, and I have attached some student peer. But sometimes I feel like I dream too big. Is that a problem? Good one there. Maybe you'll take all of them. My colleague Esther Mwangi, who is the head of research, the Directorate of Research, has thanked you a lot, Mary. I would be happy to work with you on our incubation program at IZ Hub. So after this, I can see there's a lot of follow-ups.
Yes.
And I had already read the comment from Astra Softwares. I can't remember the name of the student, but he was presenting our conference. He's asking you, how do you handle situations where investors pressure you to prioritize short-term gains over your long-term vision for the company? Wesley has a very kind word for you. I don't regret joining this session. It has been very, very impactful. That's really good. Another question from Astra again. What strategies have you found effective in managing investor expectations during challenging times, challenging or uncertain times? And there's a comment from Keith, one of my very good friends and my student. Keith is thanking you for the wealth of knowledge you have shared, especially on entrepreneurship. Your insights were very impactful and deeply appreciated. We are grateful for the opportunity to learn from you. That is Keith Nyamai. Keith runs an agency that is called 5 Agency KE. You can check it online. I've been there. He's doing some good job. And Telvin is responding to Rolly, telling him that there is no dream that is too big. So Mary, I know you had asked me that you are short on time. So
no, I think yes, I can take these last ones, and then if there's a follow-up, you can just paste them. They can also send you the remaining ones, Dr. Mwindi. I'm more than happy to not leave anyone feeling
unresponded to. In fact, I wasn't going to suggest that. I was going to say that you respond in bulk to all that.
Yes.
I give the opportunity to our student leader called Florida to speak, and then our faculty, Dan Jeru, to give a final word. Both Florida and Dan will close after you make your closing remarks from the box. The
Okay,
mic is
thank
yours.
you. Yes, so I will take it from in order of the questions. So
Yes.
regarding the role of soft skills, I would say they are very important. And what I mean is that you remember the analogy of starting the race. Whatever will get you through the door is your credentials, which means if I'm looking for a doctor, I cannot hire a lawyer because they speak well. You get.
Yes.
However, once you get through the door, whatever will differentiate the person who eventually leads the hospital, maybe, and I don't want you to think that that's the only way growth can be. You can take a specialist role or a generalist role, right? And I like you all to identify that quite early. Do you want to be the most precise neurosurgeon, or the most articulate journalist, or do you want to be the head of the publishing house or the head of the media house? Because sometimes then that helps you leverage your own strengths. However, remember, when you do a good job, you remember the line I drew, up until now, your results have spoken for themselves, such that if you get 400 and something, you go to a national school. If you get an A, you go to the top university courses. That ends here. Like after uni, your grades do not speak for you. You get what I mean? You have to speak for yourself. So you can do a really good job, but if you're not able to now stand behind the report and say, I went out of my way, this is what I did, I found this connection, somebody else will, by the way, even in the boardroom, first of all. So someone will take credit for your work, but also you might find that you're stuck, that you're doing a good job and nobody's seeing it. So again, soft skills are important, but they have to be backed by like solid work ethic. You have to make sure whatever you're doing is flawless so that when you're marketing it, nobody's poking any holes, especially at the beginning. Regarding the question of dreaming big, I'm so happy somebody has already backed me in the comments, but please take this as a sign. Like us meeting today, if you needed a sign from the universe that you are not dreaming big, take this as a sign. I will not even say more. Please check in with me in the next 5 years with your big media company, but please do not stop. Yeah, we need more people like you, and do not ever question it, because sometimes I find, especially growing up in the African continent, as somebody who's also able to compare, and I know Dr. Muindi can tell me the same. One thing, for example, I went to it's the world's largest technology conference. It's called, when I go to these events, university students, primary school and high school kids in uniform are sponsored by the UAE government to come and see these technology showcases. So they're there with like robots and self-driving cars, and these are students. So sometimes what I've learned sitting also in these rooms and at these tables is that we do not lack the skills to compete at a global level. We do not lack the knowledge. What we lack is the imagination. Because when you think about Kenyan innovators, you don't have enough good examples of Kenyans who are doing big things. But trust me, the same way if I think about a red car right now and I go out on Thika Road, I will only see red cars. There are a tremendous number of Kenyans, of Africans out there that are doing spectacular things. I would encourage you to look for them, okay? Look for them by starting to think about them and then seek them, right? And you will ask question. I know one of you asked how you balance the short-term gains, the short-term needs of investors, versus the long-term horizon. So this I can speak on two ways. I sat as an advisor in the board of one of the startups. And I remember one of the reasons why it eventually during COVID had to close down and scale back its operations was because it was looking to raise a very unique ticket size. So what you find at the very early stage, there were so many people willing to give you grants, short term, $50,000 and below. And there was very many investors who wanted to write you a check of $3 million and above, but they wanted to scale profitably and slowly. And so they were looking to raise $500,000. And it was very difficult. And so sometimes you will have to think as an entrepreneur, whether it's a strategic decision for you, either to grow slower by bootstrapping, which means reinvesting your profits, probably paying yourself very little for very long. You will have to think also, I know we are not very good at raising local capital in Africa, but sometimes you will be surprised that there are smaller groups of venture capitalists coming together and to really help you understand whether you want to take this big check and, scale up, hire people. I know there are a lot of stories. For example, we know in our ecosystem in Kenya that Twiga Foods is also scaling down, something that was really seen as the icon startup in Kenya. So try to read this and learn from them. Understand that it's not unique to you and no one is ever too big to fail. So decide. Sometimes organic growth, it's like Kipchoge, who I find very inspiring. It's organic growth. He says that when other people are starting to pant in the race, for him, his mind is super clear. But it's because he has ran that race hundreds of times before he comes. And he has made sure that for the next 1 year, I will work on improving 1 minute. So I want you to also leverage your inner Kenyan and know it's a marathon and not a sprint. And really think about how to make your operations lean, reinvest profits, hire slow. You can also outsource some of the work instead of hiring people in-house, and really make sure that you're being true to yourself. Don't worry about wanting to stand and be a successful entrepreneur too fast. You can get there slowly, but you're able to maintain it longer. So that's really important. Regarding the investors, how to also handle them when they bring in their input, maybe one thing I can advise is also bringing in strategic advisors that are experts in the field. And what that does, because as a student, what you realize is you have a good idea, you have the drive, but you don't know a lot about how things work. So naturally, as an investor, I will assume that I know more, which, by the way, I might not know actually. But what happens when you have a strategic advisor who's also an expert? Let's say you're in the media field. And sometimes, again, with this networking in events, you don't have to go asking for a job, right? You could go to conferences and events specifically scouting for advisors. And you will be surprised how many professionals will just be willing to be, yeah, send me your deck. I can look at it and I'm happy to be having a call with you once a month to go over things and just help you rethink your strategy. You will be surprised how many yeses you will get. So you don't only have to go to conferences to help you get jobs, right? So going back to my networking. So bring them on so that when you're also going to these investor meetings, you're going with some more concrete numbers. You're going to say that I think we should look away from publishing and maybe focus more on these clients because it shows that they're giving an internal rate of return of X%. And then soon you will be speaking the same language with the investor, which is not necessarily something you could know intuitively, just, fresh out of school and running your venture. So that's an alternative. Again, AI, the power of AI. Go online and say you're a coach for a top startup, media startup in Kenya, and come up with a good prompt. Say, give me a 5-point strategy that could convince my investor that we could be profitable in the next 4 years, but not in the next 1 year, and see what it comes up with. Then polish it. Yeah, honestly, it's the possibilities are limitless. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary. And Role for Media is quite encouraged, and they are thanking you for the encouragement in the comment section. One of our international students, Lukusa Christian, who's joined us online, is also very grateful. It is a great honor for me as an international student to take part in this impactful and empowering session. Thank you to you, Mary, for that. Marginal gains at its best, Telvin. And there is another question there from Astra. I'll come back to it. But Ayub Muteria thanks you a lot, Mary, for the wise words that you shared today. Astra's question maybe will be the last one we take, and then we will have Florida come on board, speak a bit, and then Dan will also take the mic after that. So on that note, in your experience, how do strategic partnerships compare to investor funding in terms of creative freedom and long-term sustainability? I think it's a compound question, but you can try to process just briefly.
Sure. So as a founder, I think you have to be really honest with yourself. As someone who's both built internal ventures and built like a startup outside a corporation, of course, when I build startups inside a corporation, I don't own them, which means as much as I'm in love with the idea and it's my baby, I have to be ready to let go when the business decides it's time to sell it or to close it or to transition it to another department. I cannot be that emotionally attached. What I find with strategic partnerships, you have to be very, very honest with yourself as a founder on what your why is. If you're building this business for your grandchildren to take over, which is really the long-term horizon, you would be more inclined to bring on investors because it allows you to still have ownership, right? So when you're assessing strategic partnerships, so let's say you have an innovation and you want to do a joint venture or a proof of concept with a big corporation, one, you have to know that this is a big fish and they also have enough capital to buy you entirely. So is this something you're ready to tolerate? What I find a lot when you deal with such founders is that they don't come to the table with a lot of clarity of what they want, which means that sometimes you will have a discussion. Of course, the big business also has a different outlook because maybe I want this and I want us to take it to China and Brazil and forget about Kenya as a market because it's too small, right? This is something I've experienced in my previous roles, for example. So you find that the founder is holding on to it for dear life. And at some point, if you disagree, unfortunately, because they have the upper hand in terms of the larger company, they don't stick around too long to wait for you to make up your mind. So I would like to see more founders going one with a lot of, make sure that it's very protected. It's very, your intellectual property. Big companies cannot move as fast as a startup. That is your superpower.